Let's now get a little more perspective from Margaret Hoover. She's the author of the new book. It's called American Individualism: How a New Generation of Conservatives Can Save the Republican Party. Margaret, good morning to you.
Good morning, Ann.
It appears that the Republican Party is moving on two separate tracks. What's exactly going on here?
So what you asked at the top of the show was, do we really have time for them to go through these renditions, caught Kevin Balance? If it's not going to get on the president's desk, he'll veto it. Well, the reason we have time is because there's really, as you've noted, a rift in the Republican Party between the GOP old guard and the Tea Party new guard. And what's going on behind the curtain right now is that they're developing the Plan B. They're working on what actually will be able to get through the Senate, what will we be able to live with in the House, and what will the president be able to sign. The big deal that we were talking about is actually what's being worked out now. Today will be a statement of principle, but what's really going to happen is what's getting worked out now.
I get it. Okay, but quoting you make a very interesting point. You say many of the Tea Party really do believe you can run the government off a cliff to prove a point, that you can default on the debt. What explains this?
Well, look, you have 87 new members in Congress who have never had the responsibility of governing before. What they have done is they have infused within the Republican Party and Washington, frankly, a real urgency to deal with the debt and the deficit. Without them and without these House Republicans, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. And that was really reflected in the impetus of the electorate in 2010. People said we need to take care of our debt and deficits. And so that's what's being reflected, and we're just working out the kinks now.
So you're saying that while on one hand you also say that they're fundamentally naive and irresponsible, on the other hand, you're saying they're bringing so much energy into the party that the party's got to figure out how to use that energy.
And let's be fair. I didn't say all the Republicans are naive and irresponsible.
No, you're talking about these specific.
There are a few new members who absolutely are ideological purists, and eventually they're going to have to give.
Okay, you write in this book that and ultimately you wrote it because you care about the direction of party, and in that vein, you were predicting in this book a generational war.
Well, here's the deal. There are 80 million millennials in this generation. Millennials were born between the beginning of the Reagan era and the end of the Clinton presidency. They came out 2-1 for Barack Obama and made the majority of the difference in his election. Partisan identity tends to solidify after 3 presidential election cycles. These kids are not voting Republican. And if we don't make inroads as a Republican Party with them in the next 16 months, we could risk losing an entire generation for the rest of their lives.
So how are the Republicans out of step with this generation born between roughly 1980 and 2000?
I think a lot of our talk right now about the debt and deficits focuses on the Tea Party. We should be catering it to the 30 and unders. The millennial generation, the policies of this administration are nothing more than generational theft. Every dollar the spending is spent right now, millennials are going to have to pay back themselves. We should be targeting our message to these 30 and under demographic because it directly impacts their fiscal future.
Meantime, I've got to ask you, because you are the great-granddaughter of Herbert Hoover, and we are facing the worst economic time since the Great Depression. Your great-grandfather was criticized for not doing more to stop the Depression. So what are the lessons that you think are applicable from his administration to today?
See, and that is a very a typical criticism of Herbert Hoover, although when you really look back at it, at the end of 1929, beginning of 1930, the New York Times said Herbert Hoover had been so active, no president before him would have done as much and no president after could do better. So that is one of these narratives. I think Herbert Hoover has been knocked with a bit of the politics of personal destruction in how he handled the Great Depression. But look, the way we handle the Depression, Herbert Hoover went on to found the Hoover Institution, which housed economists like Milton Friedman and Friedrich Hayek and many Nobel laureates. So I think his politics and what we've learned from the Great Depression has really developed since then, and the field of economics has offered tools that Herbert Hoover didn't have at his disposal then. I think he would be a cut spending permanently, grow the economy president, and I think he would be doing things to make the private sector be able to figure out how to create jobs, because at the end of the day, people need jobs, and there are pro-growth policies that we should be implementing.
All right, there you go. Margaret Hoover, a pleasure.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Ann.
you so much. And the book is called American Individualism.